The door sealed behind him with a sound like a tomb being shut. Levi stood in the airlock for exactly 3 seconds before the floor dropped out from under his feet, and he fell, not down, but sideways, or possibly inward, or possibly in a direction that hadn't been assigned a name yet by anyone who'd survived it. And when the world reassembled itself around him, he was no longer in the Blizzard campus break room in Irvine, California. He was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that smelled like ozone and burnt copper, and the specific kind of fear that comes when you realize the waiver you signed for an immersive demo experience did not actually cover interdimensional displacement. He was 23 years old. He had been an intern for 11 weeks. He had not been given health insurance yet. The chamber he landed in was enormous and violet-lit, and full of the sound of machinery that didn't quite sound like it was working correctly. Everything was slightly too large. The consoles, the corridors, the warning labels plastered across every surface in fonts that seemed to actively resist being read. Caution. Rapid catastrophic disassembly in progress. Caution. Do not make eye contact with Experiment 7. Caution. If you are reading this, the containment protocol has already failed. Levi read all of them. He was thorough like that. It was what had gotten him the internship. He pulled his badge lanyard straight, tucked his notebook under his arm, and started walking. The planet, or whatever it was, floated somewhere in a storm of perpetual violet lightning. He'd seen it through the airlock's porthole during the 3 seconds he'd had before the floor gave out. Shattered islands drifting in a purple-black void, connected by bridges of crackling energy, the whole architecture of the place suggesting that whoever designed it had prioritized looks incredible, several rungs above structurally sound. The air tasted like the moment before a thunderstorm. His teeth were humming. He'd been sent to find the developers. There had been a team of them. 4 senior designers who had been working on the new expansion, who had come down to what was supposed to be a safe, controlled demonstration of the prototype teleportation array, and who had not come back up. His manager had given him a sticky note with their names on it, and had said try to have them back by 5. The sticky note was still in his breast pocket. He touched it now. Briefly, the way you touch a thing that is not really reassurance, but is at least something solid. He found the first sign of the others in a corridor that curved upward at an angle that made his inner ear protest. Scorch marks, a dropped data pad, 1 coffee mug, still faintly warm, Levi noted, which meant something had happened recently enough to matter. He picked up the data pad. The screen was cracked but still active, showing a live feed of something Levi couldn't immediately classify. A large mechanical figure, roughly humanoid, with a head like a gear assembly and arms that ended in instruments whose purposes Levi did not want to speculate about. It was walking through a corridor that looked very much like the one Levi was standing in. The datapad said, Mechs, report to all main laboratories. Get progress update from each head scientist. Get in there. Scare them a little. Levi put the datapad in his bag. He rounded a corner and found Peter Whalen halfway through a process of transformation that was, to Levi's non-expert eye, proceeding in the wrong direction. Peter was a lead designer, middle-aged, perpetually cheerful, known for his ability to explain complex game mechanics using only hand gestures and enthusiasm. He was currently suspended in a beam of teal light, arms out, expression cycling between fascinated and terrified, in a way that suggested he hadn't yet committed to which emotion was appropriate. Around him, a row of machines hummed and blinked, and from their collective output, the beam was doing something specific and not good to Peter's molecular arrangement. Levi looked at the machines. He looked at Peter. He looked back at the machines. Is this the chicken thing, he said. It is very much the chicken thing, Peter said, in a voice that had already acquired a faint, involuntary clucking undertone. The lab around them was a study in controlled chaos, or rather, uncontrolled chaos being marketed as controlled. Research notes were pinned to every surface, diagrams of DNA spirals crossed with gear schematics. A whiteboard that said, in large letters, theoretical maximum poultry efficiency, with 3 different colored marker trails of calculation radiating out from it like the beginnings of a religion. In the center of it all, the machine pulsed, and Peter drifted 2 centimeters further in the wrong direction. Levi looked at the controls. He had not studied bioengineering. He had not studied mechanical engineering, quantum physics, dimensional transfiguration, or any subspecialty within the broad umbrella of science that turned senior game designers into chickens. He had a degree in communications with a minor in game design theory. He had interned for 11 weeks. He had in that time learned to make very good coffee, to take clear and organized meeting notes, and to remain visibly calm in situations where remaining visibly calm was the only contribution he was able to make. He studied the controls. He identified the dial that seemed most likely to be a reversal mechanism, based on the fact that it was labeled reversal mechanism in the same font as everything else, and had been turned several notches in the wrong direction. He turned it back. The machine complained loudly. The beam flickered. Peter dropped 2 centimeters back toward human. "Keep going," Peter said. Levi kept going. The process took 14 minutes, 3 false starts, 1 moment where the beam briefly expanded, and Levi's left hand started developing the bone structure of a wing. He shook it out. It resolved. He did not mention it to Peter, and a final adjustment that brought the beam down to a thin thread and then extinguished it entirely. Peter landed on the floor. He stood. He flexed his hands. He checked that his fingers were fingers. "Great," he said. "Okay, good. Yeah." He patted himself down. "I'm thinking we need to find the others." "I know where one of them is," Levi said. He was already looking at the corridor map on the wall, a schematic of the facility that covered an area roughly the size of a small city, labeled in sections. Genetics wing, robotics wing, theoretical explosives, extremely theoretical explosives, and, in the lower left corner, an area simply labeled "Do Not." "I need coffee first," Peter said. "There's a break room in robotics," Levi said. He had already identified it on the map. It was between the section labeled magnetic containment and the section labeled formerly magnetic containment. They walked. The facility was alive with sound. The background hum of reactors. The intermittent clang of something that was either assembly or disassembly. It was difficult to distinguish from the audio alone, and the periodic boom of an experiment going wrong somewhere in the upper levels, followed always by a short silence, and then the continued running of machinery, which Levi had come to understand, meant that going wrong was, in this place, expected and possibly scheduled. He had started taking notes, not because he thought the notes would be useful. He was under no illusion that this was a situation that could be resolved through thorough documentation, but because the act of writing things down was the thing he did when his hands needed to be doing something other than shaking. The notebook filled quickly. Schematics he half understood. Terminology he didn't understand at all but wrote phonetically. The layout of corridors. The patrol patterns of the mechanical sentinels that moved through the facility in what seemed like random paths, but which Levi, after 20 minutes of observation, had begun to suspect were not random at all. He drew a grid. He plotted the intervals. "They're on a 7-minute rotation," he said, at the entrance to the robotics corridor, with a patrol unit 7 meters ahead. Peter looked at him, then at the unit, then back at him. "How do you know that?" "I've been watching them." They waited 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The unit turned the corner. They went through. The break room was exactly where the map said it would be, which Levi took as a small, bright evidence of the universe's continued commitment to a basic standard of reliability. It contained a coffee maker of unfamiliar manufacture and a design philosophy that suggested coffee was viewed here, not as a beverage but as a utility fluid. The machine was large and serious-looking, and had a throughput that could fuel a small research team through a long night of catastrophic science. Peter made coffee. He made it well, with the practiced efficiency of someone who had been in many break rooms under worse circumstances. And he handed Levi a mug without asking how he took it. And Levi took it and drank it. And for a moment, neither of them said anything. "There are 2 more of them," Levi said. "Jomoro and Hadidja," Peter said. "The map shows activity signatures in the genetics wing and in something called theoretical explosives." "Which one do we go to first?" Levi thought about it. "Genetics is closer. And the explosion wing is probably self-explanatory in terms of urgency." "Reasonable," Peter said. He drank his coffee. "You know, for an intern." "Thank you," Levi said. He was writing in his notebook again. The genetics wing was quieter than the rest of the facility. Or quieter, in the way that a held breath is quiet, the specific silence of something that is paying attention. The machines here were different. Less clang and boom, more the soft whir of precise instruments, the occasional wet sound that Levi elected not to identify, and the constant gentle pulse of laboratory equipment doing its work without drama. The lighting was green-tinted, and the specimens in the containment units along the walls were things Levi looked at and then carefully stopped looking at. Jomaro was in the third lab on the left. He was fine more or less in the sense that he was still himself, and not a different species or a cloud of recombinant material. He had, however, been locked into the lab by a security protocol he couldn't crack, and had spent the intervening time doing what game designers do when they are trapped in a room with functioning equipment. He had started working. The whiteboard in his section of the lab was covered in designs, mechanisms, card concepts. He'd been using the facility's biology scanners to map evolutionary patterns, and had already, with the hand of someone who couldn't help himself, started reworking them into card mechanics. "You've been designing cards," Levi said. "I was bored," Jomaro said. "How long have I been in here?" "About 2 hours. That's not bad, actually." He looked at what he'd written. "Some of these are pretty good." Levi got the door open. The lock was a 7-segment sequential cipher that the facility had clearly designed to be intimidating. And it was, in the sense that it had 7 segments, but the protocol didn't randomize its error messages. And Levi had spent 3 weeks earlier in the internship troubleshooting access credential problems for the QA team. And this was not, structurally, very different. He worked through it methodically. It took 9 minutes. "Nice," Peter said. They went to find Hadidja. Theoretical explosives was what the map labeled the wing in the northwestern quadrant of the facility. It had 4 subsections: theoretical explosives, small; theoretical explosives, large; theoretical explosives, very large; and a subsection whose label had been scratched out and replaced, in handwriting, with the word Tuesday. They could hear the wing before they could see it. The sound was not quite an explosion, more the sustained, enthusiastic suggestion of one, a low ongoing roar with periodic emphasis. Smoke moved through the corridor ahead of them in purposeful-looking ribbons, as if it too had somewhere to be. They found Hadidja in the main research chamber, standing in front of a blast shield that had been lowered at some point and had not been raised since. She had a clipboard. She was watching an experiment proceed at a distance she had apparently judged to be the correct one, and from the expression on her face, she was right about that judgment, but was not entirely sure. "Oh good," she said when she saw them. "You found each other." "Levi found us," Peter said. She looked at Levi. He was still writing in his notebook. "Are you taking notes on my experiment?" "It's helping me stay calm," he said. He didn't look up. "Also, I think I have a preliminary understanding of the mechanism. It's a chain reaction amplifier. The output isn't random, there's a coefficient." He showed her the notebook. She looked at it for a moment. "That's actually right," she said. "There are exit protocols in the main control room," Levi said. He had the facility map spread between 2 pages, annotated now in 3 different colors. "There's a return array in the central hub. I think it's the same technology they used to bring us here. If we can access the hub, we can reverse it." "You've mapped the whole facility?" Jomaro said. "Most of it. The section labeled Do Not is still unclear." "We're leaving that one," Peter said. They moved through the facility in the formation that had evolved naturally over the preceding hour. Levi first, notebook open, watching the patrol patterns, the others in sequence behind. They moved on Levi's counts. They stopped on his holds. When a patrol unit swept the intersection ahead and would have caught them, it was because Levi had miscounted by 30 seconds. He adjusted immediately, filed the correction internally, and didn't make the error again. They reached the central hub. The hub was the heart of the facility. A rainbow 3 stories tall, dominated by the return array in its center, a ring of machinery that pulsed with the same traveling quality light as the array that had brought them here. Around its perimeter, consoles tracked every experiment in every wing of the facility simultaneously. The room was full of data. Levi went to the nearest console. The system was not designed to be operated by a 23-year-old communications major from Irvine. It was designed to be operated by researchers familiar with the specific protocols of the Boom Lab system. Or, failing that, by the mechanical operators who maintained it. There were no researchers present. The mechanical operators were on their patrol routes. Levi looked at the console. He looked at the interface. He thought about the 11 weeks, and the notes he'd taken in every meeting he had not been expected to contribute to, and the 3 weeks troubleshooting credentials, and the grid he'd drawn in his notebook for the patrol patterns, and the way the lock cipher had given itself away in its error messages. and the way the reversal dial had been labeled reversal mechanism in the same font as everything else. Everything here followed a logic, overwhelming logic, in places, alien logic in its specifics. But logic that, if you paid attention to it, if you let it speak in its own terms rather than trying to impose a framework it didn't fit, was legible, was navigable. He started working. Behind him the others waited. The room hummed. Somewhere in the upper levels, something went wrong and then kept going, and the sound of it was absorbed by the facility's routine, which had categories for this, which had protocols, which had apparently always had a category and a protocol for 23-year-old interns from Irvine, who should not have been able to read its logic, but were doing it anyway. The console responded. The return array began to cycle. "Okay," Levi said. He made a note in his notebook. "Coordinates locked, it'll take about 3 minutes to charge." "Then what?" Hadija asked. "Then it sends us back." He looked at the console. He added one more line to his notes, I think. "The return protocol is a little ambiguous." "A little ambiguous how?" Jamaro said. "It might also forward us to a second location first. There's a variable in the sequence I can't fully resolve." He closed the notebook. "I think we'll be fine." "You think?" Peter said. 7 to 80% confidence, Levi said. He was quiet for a moment. 85. "I've been adjusting as I go." The array charged. The light in the chamber shifted toward the traveling quality. Inward, or sideways, or in the unnamed direction. Levi checked his notes one last time. He'd filled most of the notebook. There was a small space left at the bottom of the last page, and in it he wrote, "Next time, ask about the health insurance before the interdimensional displacement waiver." The array fired. He was back in the break room in Irvine, California, at 4:52 p.m., with 8 minutes to spare, the others arriving in sequence around him, like cards dealt from a deck. The coffee maker in the corner was exactly where he'd left it. The air tasted normal. His teeth had stopped humming. His manager was in the doorway. "Well," she said. Levi put his badge lanyard straight. "They're back," he said. "There were some complications," he paused. "I documented everything." She looked at the notebook, which was full to the last page, and bristled with post-it annotations along the margins. "Is that a patrol map?" "It's also a schematic of the return array mechanism, a preliminary hypothesis about the genetics wing's evolutionary coefficient algorithms, and a partial layout of the facility." He handed it to her. "I thought it might be useful." She took it. She flipped through it. She looked at him for a moment, in the way that people look at things they had not expected to find. "Get yourself some coffee," she said. "You're going to have a lot of reports to file." Levi looked at the coffee maker. He looked at his watch. He looked at the blank new notebook he'd already pulled from the supply cabinet before she'd finished the sentence. "Already started," he said.